Alright, I want to share a Reaper build with all of you that I've been playing a lot in the past few days. It isn't the strongest or the fastest, but it's one of the most fun builds I've played in the past 10 years. I've been using it to grind rifts, metas, as well as taking on tougher challenges solo. Now that we have the new Relic system, I am trying out different combinations of relics with all sorts of builds. And I know that the best in slot relics have already been established, but it'd be a pity not to try experimenting simply because something isn't meta. This led me to this Reaper build, which packs enough punch to quickly take care of regular enemies and can stack so much bleeding that even a prolonged fight is no issue. Let's start by taking a look at our traits. We're going to be picking up curses, which will grant us a chance of stacking bleeding whenever we critically strike our enemies, as well as providing us with some extra critical strike chance and condition damage. As for the major traits, we'll want Chilling Darkness, which will apply chill to our enemies whenever we blind them. It'll become clear later on in this video why we will be taking so many traits that focus on chilling or bleeding. For the middle trait, I'm going with Terror, which will cause our fears to also damage our enemies. If you're fighting a lot of tougher enemies, you could choose to take Path of Corruption instead. Our Grandmaster trait will be Parasitic Contagion, because some extra sustain never hurts, especially when you're playing solo. Our second trait line will be Spite, which will help us maintain might on ourselves. There is a case to be made for all three options for the first trait. I went with Bitter Chill as we will be chilling our enemies so often that we'll be able to maintain near 25 stacks of vulnerability on them, but both other traits have their merits as well. Next, we're taking Chill of Death, which will cause lesser spinal shivers on any enemy we're attacking while their health is below 50%. And the Grandmaster trait is flexible once more. I usually choose for Close to Death, which will increase our damage by 20% when enemies are below 50%, but if you feel like you could use some extra quickness, Dread would be a decent alternative. And this brings us to Reaper, for which the minor traits are all about chilling enemies, and we're going to be playing off this even more. We want to pick up Chilling Nova, which will cause any critical hits against chilling enemies to cause an explosion that will chill adjacent foes as well. All three of the middle traits are incredible. I'm running with Chilled Victory for faster life force generation and might, but if you need extra sustain, you can take Soul Eater instead. Our final trait is the reason we're taking all these different ways to apply chill, as Deathly Chill will stack bleeding every time we apply chill to an enemy. And we're going to be combining this with Relic of the Ice, which will shoot out icicles that chill our enemies every time we use our elite skill. You'll notice that by simply pressing your elite skill and auto-attacking, you'll be stacking about 30 applications of bleed in a second or two. If you look over the traits again, you'll notice that almost all of them either apply stacks of bleeding or chill our enemies, which will apply even more bleeding thanks to our Grandmaster Reaper trait. And thanks to Necro's incredible access to cleave, fighting groups of mobs becomes even more fun with the Chilling Nova trait. And we're going to be choosing our utility skills to apply even more bleeding or chill. For the healing skill, I prefer running with Signet of Vampirism for the extra passive sustain and a slight bump to our damage, but if you need more healing or condition cleanse, any of the other healing skills work pretty well. We'll be taking 2 Shouts, your all weaklings for extra vulnerability and might, and Suffer for extra damage, chill, and to transfer our conditions from ourselves to our enemies. I like running Spectral Grasp as our third utility, which will yet again chill our enemies, but more importantly, pull them towards us. This skill is such a quality of life in the open world, as you don't need to chase down your enemies, instead you get them to come to you. Our elite skill is the Reaper Shout Chilled to the Bone, which deals pretty insane damage, freezes enemies once more, and provides you with a set of wounds. Your gear is pretty flexible, and will most likely depend on your budget and preferences. In the footage, I am running with Celestial gear simply because I wanted to see how a middle of the road option would perform and was pretty happy with the results. If you want a more aggressive set, or you don't have the luxury of crafting multiple sets due to budget constraints, Vipers would do just fine and is an excellent stat combination for instance group content as well. If you rather double down on defense, you could think about picking up Trailblazer gear instead. This build is tailor-made for Superior Rune of the Crate, which increases our condition damage and bleeding duration. But once more, if you can't make an open world specific set, it's fine running with Vipers and whatever rune you already have slotted in. This build will still work just fine. As for the weapons, I choose to go Staff as well as Pistol and Dagger. Technically, Scepter would be the weapon of choice instead of Pistol, but this is all about having fun and trying new combinations. The sigils will be the same for both sets. You want to have Sigil of Earth, which will inflict bleeding whenever you critically strike a foe, and Sigil of Hydromancy, which will chill enemies whenever you swap weapons. Going into and exiting Reaper Shroud counts as a weapon swap, by the way, so if you don't like weapon swapping, you will still gain the full benefit from the Hydromancy sigil. And I already covered the relic, which will be the Relic of Ice. Playing this build is simple. Just press whatever button is off cooldown. When you go into Reaper Shroud, you want to be hitting Shroud 5 prior to Shroud 4 and 2. Shroud 5 will create an ice field, which will allow Shroud 4 to apply massive amounts of chill and thus once again stacks of bleeding. Using Shroud 2 in an ice field will give you a frost aura, which reduces damage taken by 10% and will chill any foe that attacks you. This build has enough sustain and damage to tackle any challenge solo. If you're going for some extreme challenges, let's say soloing legendary bounties, then blood magic might be something to consider instead of spite. But that's more of an extreme use case that will probably not apply to everyone. This build isn't ready to be taken into instance content just yet, as you would be sitting around 20k DPS. But if there is enough interest, I don't mind trying to figure out how we can make it work in strikes and raids as well. As always, if you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them down below, and don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons.